It was called The Sons of Willie Horton, Black Representations in Media of Hip Hop. And the reason that I did that is because oftentimes we have a certain perception of what hip hop is. We forget about its origin. We forget about why it started as a movement and culture in the first place. But the gentleman we honor today, MF Doom, represents the best of what hip hop has to offer.
Right.
I was just asking about something not that long ago. I was talking to people.
So before I start to introduce our first speaker to the podium, I do want to tell you this brief story because it means something to me, but I think it should mean something to you. When I was president of a regional workforce board down in North Carolina, we had the DREAM Act, DACA, come up through legislation. And as you know, we had so many young people whose talent was nurtured and developed right here on American soil. I was the only workforce board president, along with other CEOs, to sign on to DACA. And the reason I did, and this is something I've only told now 4 people, is that I also thought about a young man by the name of Daniel Dumile. And while Washington didn't get it right, and that this dreamer didn't get the full citizenship he should have had, the city of Long Beach got something right by ensuring that his legacy on the soil in which he developed his talent is one where he'll never be forgotten.
That's right.
Thank you for that. So speaking of the city of Long Beach, I want to introduce to you City Council member Michael DeLore.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike DeLore. Very proud to be here today. It's a beautiful day here in sunny Long Beach. I just want to acknowledge that Karen McGinnis, Liz Treston, President John Bendo are here as well. I noticed Senator Kaminsky to my right. If there's other people here, I apologize because I just haven't seen you, but here goes. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mike DeLore, a member of the Long Beach City Council. On behalf of the council, I want to welcome everyone and thank you all for coming to this street dedication. I'm pretty sure this is going to come as a surprise to a great many of you, but I am not exactly what you would call a hip-hop aficionado. Truth be told, up until about 6 months ago, I have never even heard of KMD or MF Doom. And when the petition for this street dedication hit my desk, I was initially reluctant because I didn't know who he was. But then I started researching who Daniel Dumile, or Doom, was. As I said, I'm no hip-hop aficionado, but I'm not going to get into a debate about whether the rhymes on gas draws, clever references in microwave mayo, or the accordion intro on the Madvillian album appeal to me most. But it became clear to me that Doom's acclaim and influence in the music industry are world-renowned. But as I told my fellow council members, what really struck me was his personal story. Doom experienced an unfortunately amount of personal loss and adversity in his life. While he clearly struggled with it, he also seemingly used it to redefine himself and his craft. The results ended up influencing, inspiring, and just plain spoke to an incredibly wide array of people the world over. While his time on Earth was far too short, his legacy, both in music and his personal story, will endure forever. We hope this sign, while just a small gesture, will serve as a tribute and reminder for this generation and those that come that no matter what life throws at you, you can turn it into something great and inspire others. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Delory. This time we are going to have join us New York State Senator Todd Kmd.
Hi everybody, it's really great to be together as neighbors on this important occasion. I had the pleasure of growing up in Long Beach, just like my mom did. And when I was growing up, there were certain things you just knew, because people who grew up in the same town I did went on to do great things. I was told when I was growing up, Billy Crystal is world famous and he went just to your high school. And Scotty Grahm, he plays in the NFL and he went to this high school. I actually remember watching him play. And in that pantheon of people who are going to be known, who had their roots here but touched the stars, is going to be Doom. And absolutely. And it sends a very simple message. If you live in this town, no matter what street, no matter what house, you can do anything that you put your mind to. And I want every young girl and boy to see that and know that they could reach the stars. So this is a great day. Let's all celebrate it together. And let's know that a little piece of us is now up there and will inspire those for a generation. Thank you, the city, for doing this. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you, Senator. At this time, we have a very special part of this celebration because we're about to hear from the family of Doom. Yes. Okay, this young lady I'm about to introduce is someone I think that you will see is full of life and love. His auntie, Aunt Listra Rice.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Patrick Graham, facilitator for the Kmd-Mf Doom Way dedication ceremony. All of the Long Beach City Council officials and also any other officials present, friends, and all those who loved my nephew. All that men would praise the Lord for his goodness and his words to the children of men. I want to thank God for blessing my nephew Subroc and Doom with their creative abilities. Ooh. They are a product of a spiritual family who depended upon the Lord in all of their endeavors. I want to formally thank Alonzo Hodge and the young men who organized and eloquently presented the petition at the City Council meeting. My family is extremely grateful for your support and vision to memorialize my nephews Daniel Dumile, aka MF Doom, and Dingley's Ways Dumile, aka Subroc. They are gone too soon, but not forgotten. So as we gather here today to honor my late nephews, as they are affectionately referred to as Dinga and Dumile, I feel extremely blessed to represent and share the proud sentiments of their aunts and uncles. I am from a family of 10, 8 girls and 2 boys. And we witnessed their youthful passion for music and their creative style that developed right here at 114 East Hudson Street. They worked tirelessly on improving their skills in their musical genre. They acquired their creativity and drive from their parents. Their mom, Ashlyn, who was 2 years older than me, had a special gift for writing. And their father, Daniel, an artist and educator, who met at an art show at the Kennedy Plaza, like around 1970. Doom and Dinga brought joy and excitement to the family when they performed at the Arsenio Hall show with their group Kmd. I remember informing some of my students who were interested in rap music that my nephew had a group, Kmd. They didn't believe me. They were in disbelief and wanted me to prove it. My nephew's musical talent was so widely recognized that a classroom of young, diverse students I was teaching in Forest Hills went crazy when I mentioned that MF Doom was my nephew. I stand here reminiscing when my handsome nephew walked down the aisles as my Bible bearer in August 1977. There he is. He accomplished his task with charm, and now almost 44 years later, he has left a rich legacy. Thanks again for honoring Dumile's legacy and the street sign, with the street sign Kmd-Mf Doom Way.
Auntie delivered as promised. She has a voice in her own right. And I want to bring up to you now Thenjiwe Dumile.
Thank you. I'm going to start off by giving thanks to the Most High for gathering all of us here on this beautiful day to honor the legacy of both of my brothers and their contribution as a result of some of the foundations that we received when we were here in Long Beach. But I thought I'd start out, I think, maybe talking a little bit about who my brothers were before we arrived. So for context, I started first grade here. So I was maybe 6 or 7, but that would make Doom and Raheem maybe in 5th grade, 6th grade, and maybe 4th grade. So elementary school and middle school. And as a result of that, while I got foundation here, my brothers were entering into their formative years. So their foundations, we lived in Mount Vernon, we lived in Manhattan, we lived in Freeport. And, my 2 oldest brothers were thick as thieves. And, everything that they, set as a foundation in terms of their music and their music career, I remember when I was, even 3 and 4 years old, them with record players that were, toys, scratching on, plastic, albums. So early on, they already had their plan and their blueprint set up. So by the time they got here and they were going to school, I remember my mom getting notes and calls not necessarily about our grades. We're all eggheads, and so we all got good grades, but behaviorally, my brothers had their own ideas. Let's just put it that way. Sometimes they wanted to attend school, and sometimes they had other things that were more pressing and important for their goals. Now, I'm not encouraging I'm stay in school, kids. That's not. But what I'm saying is, very early on, they knew and understood what it is that they wanted to do. And so when we landed here, when we arrived here, they set out to, assemble a crew, assemble a team, and to mobilize and organize. Some people, just know them as classmates, but, they also, were part of a crew, GYP, and GYP, organized, so many things in this community that I was influenced by that time in my own formative years, and so proud of. I say that to say they had their own ideas, they had their own mindset, and although my mother got notes, she understood. We are the product of a nurse, working class, and my dad was a science and math teacher as well as an artist. And so we already had our culture, already set up. We already understood how to create and how to express that creation out into the world. And so it wasn't about their behavior. Their behavior was such that despite what anyone was telling them about the way that they needed to conform in the classroom, they had, bigger dreams and bigger goals. So I think that the renaming of this street kind of represents a culmination and a full circle moment of everything that, they brought with them from where we had been before we landed in Long Beach, and everything that we got from Long Beach, from the school system, from this community. And although they're not here with us, of course they're here in spirit. Of course they're here in music. Of course they're here in art. Of course they're here in expression. Of course they're here in the love that isn't just represented here, but of course there are people that would have loved to have been here today and all over the world through their own expressions of art, their own expressions of music. My brothers are living on in infamy, and I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of them and everything that they accomplished, and I'm so proud of them for sticking to exactly what it is that they set out to do. And they're not here because it was a job well done. So I want to thank everybody that's here, everybody that came to attend, everybody that's gonna watch any footage, anybody that is inspired and impacted by what it is that they left behind for us to continue to be able to appreciate. I want to thank the city of Long Beach for recognizing, despite not understanding initially, for recognizing, for taking the time to take a look at what was done by my brothers, and to see it for what it is, to appreciate it, and to give it back to this community. So I thank you guys.
Isn't she beautiful?
Yes!
Isn't she beautiful? Just as important, isn't she intelligent?
Yes!
Yes.
That's my cousin.
So at this time, I want to bring up another family member who is also the National Director of Working Families Party, Mr. Maurice Mitchell.
Peace and greetings. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Maurice Mitchell. I'm the child of Michael and Marlene. I'm the very proud cousin of Zev Love X, aka MF Doom, aka Victor Vaughn, aka King Ghidra, aka Daniel. We loved him. Those of us that loved him, we simply called him Dumile or Doom. Before I say another word, I'd like to acknowledge the MF Doom KMD committee for organizing this. I'm an organizer, so I have to always acknowledge the organizers. Thank you to the city of Long Beach for recognizing Dumile and Dingy's incredible legacy. I'd also like to acknowledge my family. There's a tribe of us here who grew up in Long Beach. We're now into our second and third generation here in Long Beach. I'm with my son Malachi, who's at 114 right now, my 5-year-old. I'd like to elevate my auntie Ashlyn, who's no longer with us. My cousin Raheem, or Dingy as we called him. And I have to be honest, when I was asked to speak today, I started to develop anxiety. Like in my career, in my path, I'm asked to speak a lot in front of large crowds, small crowds, and this is very different. You know, I was looking at a blank page at 5 a.m. today, trying to wrap my mind around what could I say in 5 minutes to give Doom justice, and the reality is I would need 5 hours, and that still wouldn't scratch the surface. Doom was many things to many people. To some a friend, to many an artist, to the world an icon. Whatever Doom you got was and is authentic. He was that layered. I would say though that we as family, we got the 360. We saw and loved and knew every version of him. We saw his humor and playfulness, his social anxieties, his idiosyncrasies, his care, his rare genius, displayed on all levels, not just in the arts. To know him was an education. He breathed possibility into everything he did. And he did so many things well. He was hip-hop. And a master of all the elements of hip-hop. Back in the 80s, Doom was breaking at the boardwalk. He was a masterful DJ, a masterful producer, a masterful graffiti artist, a master in the science of emceeing and rhyming. And he was always studying, always curious. But more than that, he was a spiritual scholar, an organizer, a father who loved his family. Doom was as much a child of hip-hop as he was a product of and the synthesis of so many peoples and traditions and cultures, a father from Southern Africa. In fact, he was the first of 4 that donned these regal African names: Dumile, Dingalizwe, Dimbaza, Thenjiwe. A mother from the West Indies, raised in rural poverty in southern Trinidad, with 9 siblings. He is the grandson of Henrietta, who came to this country as a domestic worker, left her home and her family and her children to tend in the homes and for the families of other people, to send remittance in order to bring her family here. She was the protagonist and architect of our family's dream. And with that domestic worker salary, hustled and sent for her children, and eventually bought that house right there, 114. He was born in Europe, in England, and then raised here on these streets, and nursed by a uniquely African-American cultural experience and artistic context. Zimbabwe, Trinidad, the UK, Long Beach, New York. He's a child of the diaspora. He is the promise and the prayers of our ancestors answered. He is the product of the enslaved ancestors that left the continent, as well as the ancestors that stayed. Birthed in the womb of a woman that left the land of sugarcane to raise a god in the wilderness of North America. He had no choice but to be great. because he was a child of Ashland, a brilliant and passionate woman. The only woman in Long Beach I ever saw wearing a full niqab, the Muslim garb. Her tongue was filled with righteousness and power, so he had no choice but to be great, because he was the big brother of Raheem, a transcendent artist and leader, Subroc, an artist in his own right that changed the game. Thenjiwe and Dimbaza, his other younger siblings, he had no choice but to be great, because he had a tribe, this big, beautiful, extended family. He was nurtured in a family context. We cousins, many of us. Some of you don't even know we're related, but we're everywhere in Long Beach. We're more like siblings. We played and laughed and hung together, supported one another through all the trials and tribulations. I remember watching my sister Michelle and Doom roll together in the late 80s and early 90s during hip-hop's golden era, wishing I could be a part, but knowing I was way too young. He was a spiritual scholar, raised Muslim. Eventually his spirituality transcended labels. When I was young, although he was Muslim, he used to drop these jewels from the King James Bible to challenge my thinking, pointing out the most profound, esoteric, spiritual concepts, connecting that to astrology and physics and history and science and hip-hop. This was him as a teenager. He was a leader during the 80s, during the crack era. He built a crew, GYP, that was heavy here on these streets, that at a time in New York when there was so much tragedy and death, they represented consciousness, knowledge of self, study, brotherhood, sisterhood. Look at that legacy. Doom was a manifester. I'll tell a story. I said I was going to be brief, but I'll tell a story. I remember walking with Doom on the boardwalk for like a few hours after he had lost his record deal from Elektra, but before he began releasing new music. He laid out this vivid detail, this vision that would become reality over the next 20 years. This character, MF Doom, the other characters he'd be writing for, the multiple projects, all the ways that he would subvert the music industry that hurt him. Honestly, I was taken aback. I love my cousin, but I was skeptical. But, so from my standpoint, witnessing this all unfold, as he told me, exactly, it's like witnessing magic unfold in the world. I still sometimes, I pause and wonder at how he was able to manifest this, and how he's able to change the culture of the entire world. Not just hip hop, but you could talk to rock artists and soul artists and jazz artists that have been influenced by MF Doom. So in a very real way, music as we know it will not be what it is if it wasn't for the children that grew up in that house right there. His ability to manifest is what has inspired me to manifest my vision, to stay focused on the plan, to trust my instincts. His life was a lesson. Some of you may know that I was instrumental in the birth of the movement for Black Lives, or how people call the Black Lives Matter movement. I could argue with sincerity that I would not have had the confidence or clarity or belief in my own vision to go to St. Louis during the height of the uprising for Mike Brown, or help build the architecture of a national movement, or run a national political party if Doom was not my cousin. I witnessed that man through his mind architect a cultural revival. So why can't I, also the grandson of Henrietta and Joe, themselves who out of the clay of Trinidad molded their own vision, not architect movements? He wore a mask and was able to do so much with his anonymity. So how can I not be an organizer that behind the scenes helps change the world? See, we lived for a time together in my mom's house, and he was working on his albums in my mom's basement. I witnessed this man produce a classic hip-hop album in my mom's basement, weaving together Bobby Humphrey samples and Gil Scott-Heron samples, some records that he borrowed from my father's collection and never returned, and produced these cultural artifacts that happened right before my eyes as a young person. How can that not permanently affect somebody's worldview, witnessing that? How can that not elevate a child's consciousness? You know, I played in a hardcore punk rock group. That was all Doom. I tried to help birth the Afropunk movement. That was all Doom. He continued to inspire and lead until his last breath. My son Malachi is here. He's 5. I remember visiting Doom and his family when Malachi was 1. Doom was so clear. No longer touring, surrounded by his wife and children. I asked him about his artist life on the road, the prospect of doing more projects, and he had so many projects. It would blow your mind, especially the Doom fans. Multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary hip-hop and musical icon. What was his focus? His family, his children, spending quality time with them, nurturing them. He could have indulged in all the world had to offer an icon like him. And you know, in his past, he did indulge in some of those things. But the Doom that I met a few years ago in his home was grounded, and he was clear that it was family. It was raising his children. It was being close to his wife. It's the most indelible thing any man, any person could possibly do. And so I left his house, now being a new father, once again transformed by interacting with him. Which brings me to my last message. What I witnessed at Doom's feet elevated my consciousness. Through his life, he taught us all. All of us can benefit through the elevation of consciousness, that knowledge of self, that study and manifesting of the lessons derived from knowing oneself, so that we may not be stuck and spiritually small, but emergent and spiritually limitless. What do I mean by that? We go through natural stages of development, from subject, somebody where things happen to you, to agent, somebody who makes things happen, to activist, where you mount interventions that make waves, to catalyst, where your actions set the pace for the world. From student, where you learn lessons, to teacher, where you bestow information, to master, where you make new knowledge, to sage, where you impart the wisdom to synthesize all of that knowledge into a life worth living. From child, where you are nurtured, to adult, where you nurture and care for yourself, to parent, where you nurture family, to leader, where you nurture community. These stages are natural, but they're not inevitable. Some of us get stuck. There's some 50-year-old and 60-year-old, 40-year-old children out here, right?
Yep.
So what Doom showed us in his relatively short life is how to transcend all those levels. Listen to his music. If you honor Doom, if you love Doom, figure out how you could grow from child to adult, how you could transcend to become a sage. He did that all in his short lifetime. So I want you to, when you go home, play a Doom joint, whichever one from his many projects, from KMD all the way down. Be with somebody close to you. If you're a parent, hug up on your child, and then practice your journey. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause for the family. To my city of Long Beach, you obviously can see why we got it right. All right. So this time I'm going to have some friends and some people in the industry who want to say a few words. And this gentleman that's about to come up, I got a call one day back in the midst of the pandemic. We are still in one. And he asked me to get involved in this movement. And he came with the most sincere voice, and I asked him why.